The train station buzzed with life, a vibrant hub of activity as commuters rushed to and from their destinations. The bright fluorescent lights flickered above the crowd, illuminating the hustle and bustle. Ticket machines beeped as people eagerly tapped their cards, while others shared quick laughs and stories while waiting for their trains. The scent of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, mixing with the cool breeze that swept in from the open doors. As the clock ticked down, more passengers filled the platform, each person absorbed in their own world. Some were immersed in books or phones, while others chatted animatedly with friends. The sound of the train's horn echoed through the station as it approached, bringing a mix of excitement and impatience among the crowd. When the train doors slid open with a hiss, passengers surged forward, shuffling into the cars like water flowing through a creek. Among them was a composed woman whose calm presence seemed to offer a moment of peace amid the chaos. With her cluttered surroundings slowly fading away, she took a seat by the window, ready for her journey ahead. Unbeknownst to her that an unexpected confrontation was about to unfold. As the train rolled smoothly out of the station, the woman settled comfortably into her seat. She had long, dark hair that fell softly over her shoulders, framing her serene face. Her warm brown eyes gazed out the window, reflecting a quiet confidence. Dressed in a simple yet elegant outfit, she seemed completely at ease, enjoying the scenery as it blurred past. Little did she know that her peaceful ride was about to be shattered. On the other side of the aisle sat a man whose very presence disrupted the harmony of the train. He slouched in his seat, arms crossed tightly over his chest, exuding an air of aggression. With a buzz cut and a tattoo peeking from beneath his sleeve, he looked like trouble waiting to happen. His sharp gaze scanned the passengers as if searching for someone to provoke. When he caught sight of the woman's calm facade, an idea crossed his mind. He smirked, thinking she would be an easy target for a bit of mischief. Ignoring the warnings of those around him, he leaned forward, ready to make his move and disrupt her tranquility for his own amusement. With a sudden jolt, the train hit a bump, and the bully saw his chance. He got up from his seat and strode purposefully toward the woman, a sneer playing on his lips. As he approached, passengers looked up, sensing the tension in the air. The atmosphere grew heavy. Conversations halted, and all eyes turned to him. Without warning, he lunged forward and slapped her across the face. The sound echoed sharply, silencing the whispers and gasps that followed. The woman's head snapped to the side in shock, her serene expression replaced by disbelief. For a brief moment, time seemed to freeze as everyone processed what had just happened. A murmur rippled through the crowd as people exchanged glances, unsure of how to react. Some passengers sat frozen in their seats, while others instinctively edged closer, ready to defend her. The train began to feel like a cage filled with anxious energy, where fear and outrage mixed in equal measure. The bully stood there with a smirk, but it was quickly fading as the reality of his actions began to sink in. What had he done? Chaos erupted in the train car as the slap rang out, breaking the brief silence that had momentarily enveloped the scene. Gasps filled the air, punctuated by murmurs of disbelief. Passengers instinctively stood up, their eyes wide with shock and confusion. Some leaned forward in their seats, straining to catch a better view of what was happening. A woman near the front shouted, "Hey, what's wrong with you?" Her voice cut through the tension, igniting a wave of support from others who began to voice their outrage. Several men stood up, their expressions steely as they moved toward the bully, ready to confront him. Amidst the rising chaos, some passengers exchanged hurried glances, weighing whether to intervene or keep their distance. The atmosphere crackled with a mix of fear and anger. Everyone felt the weight of the moment. The calm woman sat frozen for a heartbeat before finally processing what had happened, her hand moving to her cheek where he had struck her. The bully's bravado crumbled as he realized he was no longer just an aggressor, but also a target. He shifted uneasily, sensing that he was now surrounded by a crowd ready to protect her at all costs. As the atmosphere thickened with tension, the bully, trying to regain his composure, sneered at the crowd. "What's the big deal? It was just a little slap," he boasted, attempting to downplay his aggression. His bravado faltered, however, as he glanced around at the furious faces ready to challenge him. But then something shifted in the air. A passenger from the back of the train shouted, "Do you even know who she is?" The question hung in the air like a heavy weight. Confused murmurs swept through the crowd as some passengers began whispering her name, Jason Statham's wife. The bully's smirk faded, replaced by a look of shock and realization. He felt his heart race as he finally connected the dots. This woman wasn't just an ordinary target, but someone well-known and protected by a famous husband. The reality of what he had done began to sink in deeper, and fear seeped into his bravado. His shoulders slumped as he took a step back, suddenly aware of how foolish and reckless he had been. The crowd's anger now felt even more threatening as they rallied behind her, and he could sense that help was on its way, perhaps in ways he never calculated. Panic surged through the bully as the realization sank in. He had just struck a woman who was connected to an action star. His heart raced uncontrollably, and beads of sweat formed on his forehead. He looked around, suddenly feeling trapped in the train car, and the angry expressions of the passengers looming over him felt like a storm closing in. Thoughts raced through his mind. Was Jason Statham on this train? If so, what would happen when he found out? He imagined the worst scenarios, being confronted, humiliated, or worse. The dream of being a tough guy morphed into sheer terror as the reality of his actions replayed in his head like a slow-motion film. Desperation gripped him as he tried to retreat back toward his seat, but found it impossible to escape the glaring eyes judging him. Every moment stretched out as he caught snippets of whispered conversations, half-formed plans from the crowd around him. Would someone call security? Would there be repercussions that he couldn't outrun? Regret washed over him like a cold wave. He never intended for things to spiral so out of control, and now he was terrified of facing what came next. As the tension in the train car thickened, the passengers who had been shocked into silence began to spring into action. A woman with kind eyes hurried over to the calm woman, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice steady and filled with concern. The calm woman nodded slowly, still processing what had just happened, but grateful for the support. Nearby, a tall man stepped forward, his expression fierce. "You shouldn't have done that," he shouted at the bully, his voice booming with authority. Other passengers echoed similar sentiments, their anger palpable as they glared at him. Some even moved closer to the woman, forming a protective circle around her as if to shield her from further harm. Whispers of encouragement and reassurance flowed through the crowd. "You're not alone. We're here for you," one person said, while another added, "Let's make sure he doesn't get away with this." The atmosphere shifted from shock to defiance as more people stood up and faced the bully, united in their determination to support the woman. In that moment, he realized he was completely isolated in his actions, and the crowd's solidarity only deepened his sense of dread. Just as the atmosphere reached a boiling point, the train doors slid open with a whoosh, and the commotion outside drew everyone's attention. A tall figure stepped onto the train, instantly capturing the gaze of every passenger. It was Jason Statham, exuding charisma and confidence as he walked down the aisle with purpose, his presence electrifying the air. Whispers erupted among the crowd, and people pointed in shock, their eyes wide with recognition. "Look, it's Jason Statham," one voice called out, breaking through the chaos. The bully's face drained of color as he feebly turned to see who had arrived. Realizing who stood before him amplified his fear. No longer was he just facing an angry crowd. He was now confronted with a well-known action star. As Statham approached his wife, concern evident on his face, the weight of the moment settled heavily on the bully's shoulders. People shifted aside to create a path for Statham, now fully aware that any chance of escapism was gone. The tension in the air thickened as everyone awaited Statham's reaction, knowing well that this confrontation could lead to serious consequences for the man who dared to cross a line he should never have approached. As Jason Statham approached, his focus remained steady on the bully, who stood frozen in place, a mix of fear and defiance in his eyes. Statham's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the tense atmosphere as he took measured steps, making it clear he was in control of the situation. "You chose the wrong person to mess with," he said, his voice low and firm but devoid of rage. The bully shifted uncomfortably, trying to muster a response, but his bravado had all but vanished. "I didn't mean," he stammered, only to be cut off by Statham's piercing gaze. "There are consequences for actions like yours," he continued, his tone unwavering. The crowd watched in silence, captivated by the confrontation unfolding before them. Statham leaned slightly closer, ensuring their eyes met. "I protect my family, and I won't stand by while you disrespect her," he said, each word carrying the weight of his resolve. The bully felt the full force of Statham's words wash over him, realizing that this was no idle threat. As he backed away slightly, the passengers' cheers filled the air, rallying behind Statham and affirming that justice was about to be served. The situation reached its resolution as a couple of uniformed security personnel arrived, alerted by the commotion. They quickly assessed the scene, and the passengers pointed toward the bully who stood trembling, eyes darting nervously. "This man needs to be removed from the train," Statham informed the security team, his voice calm yet commanding. The officers nodded, understanding the gravity of what had occurred. With reluctant compliance, the bully was escorted toward the train doors, face flushed with embarrassment and regret. The crowd murmured in satisfaction as he was led away, a clear message that such behavior wouldn't be tolerated. As he stepped off the train, he realized that he had crossed a line he could never uncross, learning a valuable lesson about respect and kindness. Once the train resumed its journey, Statham turned to his wife and the surrounding passengers. "Thank you for standing up," he said sincerely, and they nodded in appreciation. The atmosphere lightened and conversations resumed softly. This incident served as a reminder for everyone aboard. Courage comes not just from being strong, but also from respecting one another. Kindness should always prevail over aggression.